What's up guys, Matt here. Today I'm over here at the cabinet shop and I'm gonna do a how-to video on building the face frame for my kitchen island. First thing I do when I'm building a cabinet, I sketch out a blueprint and I make a cut list. This kind of simplifies everything and makes sure that you're cutting your wood most efficiently and you can stick to a plan and not have to be thinking it out of your head, and you can get through the process faster. I'm gonna go over this blueprint real quickly with you. Here's the face frame. This is where the doors will be located. There will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 doors in here. So right here on the side, we're gonna have our 2 3/4, 2 3/4 here, and then 2 inch, 2 inch. The top will be 2 inch, and then this will be around 4 inches or whatever I have left over on a board. These are my measurements. We got 89 3/4 total. Our height's gonna be 36 3/4. My 26 1/4 is gonna be these two right here. So we have our cut list right here. We're gonna do 2 of the 2 3/4. 2 of the 2 inch, 1 of the top rails, and 1 of the bottom rails. Let me take you over here and show you the lumber I picked up yesterday. I got about 38 more board foot of knotty alder right here, and I've just got it all laid out here so I can kind of pick through it and see what I want to use for the rails, where I want the knots to be. So I have this board already chosen right here. I've got it marked out in 3-foot increments, and I'm going to go ahead and cut it down into more manageable pieces. I can create a straighter piece on the joiner with a 3-foot piece and a straighter cut in the table saw with a 3-foot piece. So from these 2 pieces right here, I'll get my 2 2 3/4 pieces, and I'll also get my 2 2-inch pieces. I've also chosen an 8-foot piece right here that we're gonna be able to get our 2-inch top rail from and our 4-inch or 6-inch, whatever we end up with, bottom rail from. So now I'm gonna take these 3 pieces of wood right over here to the joiner, and I'm gonna run them through to get a clean straight edge. All right, guys, we've got our pieces jointed. We've got straight edges on them. Now we're gonna move over here to our table saw, and we're gonna set this to cut each of these individual pieces. And I should have reminded you in the beginning of this video that you need to wear your hearing protection and your eye protection, even though you don't see me doing that in this case. You should always wear safety protection. Safety comes first. All right, we've got our saw table set to 2 3/4. We're gonna run our 2 short pieces. All right, we've now reset the saw for our 2-inch pieces. We'll rip our 2 short pieces first, then we will rip our long 2-inch piece, and whatever's left over will be the bottom. So we had about 5 1/4 inches wide left on here. I'm gonna go ahead and rip this crooked edge down to 5 1/4 just to make it straight across the bottom, and it'll look better to me before it gets covered up. All right, guys, we're gonna motivate back over to the chop saw and cut all these to the perfect final length before we pocket screw them, and we'll come back to the saw table here and we'll run our orbital sander over the edges just to take out the saw kerf before we put them together. A lot easier to sand them before they are together in the face frame like this. This is a lot harder to sand after it's together than when you can set them up here on the table and just sand the edges all at one time. All right, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set our saw stop up right here to 34 3/4 to cut the 2 outside pieces. We cut our pieces all the same length. Okay, now we're gonna reset this to 26 1/4, and this will be the 2-inch pieces that are in between the doors. All right, our final cut will be the 84 1/4 cut for the top rail and the bottom 5 1/4 rail. I'm gonna cut them, square up the ends, and then I'll flip the camera around and show you. I'm just gonna clamp them together because they're longer and cut them both at the same time so that they will be even. Okay guys, I have marked the 84 1/4 mark right here on the top piece. Have the pieces laying on top of each other. And I flush the ends up perfectly right here and clamp them together with this quick grip clamp. Now I'm just gonna pull this down to the saw, get everything up against the fence in the back like it should be. And ta-da, we have two perfectly even pieces. Next, I'm gonna bring all our pieces over here to our Craig pocket jig that we've got upset here on the vacuum. Okay guys, the only thing we're gonna have to pocket screw right here are the ends of our 2-inch, and we're gonna have to pocket screw the ends of our long pieces. We wanna make sure we put the knots to the outside since we're going with a rustic knotty alder finish on this island. Clamp it in. All right guys, the way this little jig table is made right here, it is just as easy to pocket screw these large pieces as it is a small piece. All right, so now let's go back over here to the assembly table. I'll break out the orbital sander and we'll put a smooth finish on these sides before we glue them up and screw them together. I'm gonna take the orbital sander, I'll flip these guys up on their sides, and I'm gonna run some 80 grit over this to take the little bit of saw kerf, burn marks, and maybe some small grooves out from the joiner blade. All right, folks, got all these sanded exactly like I told you with the 80 grit. I'm not gonna go down anymore. I'll sand these with a 3M sander, air sander later. And this is gonna be a rustic island, so it does not have to be perfect. I will be beating it up and making a lot of distressing in later videos. So now I'm gonna lay this out on my assembly table here just to make sure that all the parts are cut correctly before I go gluing it and screwing it together. All right guys, so here it is. I've got it laid out on this table right here. I have looked through each rail and style and made sure the knots are exactly how I want them to be. You can flip them over. I've got the knots on the front side. We do have the back side facing up because that's where you're gonna be putting the screws in, so that's how you have to assemble it. I double checked all the measurements, made sure that from left to right it was properly, spaced out the doors properly, and the easiest thing to do is you're gonna wanna use this as a spacer right here. When you put this together, you can use the other one the same way, and I cut a spacer right here, 26 3/4, and that is gonna be the space in between my door openings. And using these spacers as a tool is gonna help you with more precise measurements once your finished product is put together. So I'm gonna be using the Craig screws and the Craig clamps to clamp this together, and I'll be using a glue to glue it as well. So I'm gonna run in here in the bathroom real quick and get me a wet washcloth so I can wipe off the majority of the squeeze out glue. It's not imperative that you get it all. I do like to get it wiped off down in these cracks and crevices where it's harder to sand later. I will be running the face frame through our drum sander so it'll take everything off the face, but it doesn't get down into there. You can see on this little cross section face frame, You can't get down in there. So it's best if you go ahead and wipe as much glue off as you can with your wet washcloth. That way it won't penetrate that grain and make a spot where the stain won't soak in. It'll be a lighter spot that you'll see once your product's finished. Whoa! I'm gonna start right here on this end with the top piece first, and I will work my way to the end to where the last piece down there will go on last. Here's the screws. I'm using these 1.25 inch coarse thread square head. So I'm gonna coat the end of this piece with glue. Kind of in a weird position here since the piece is so long. You wanna get plenty of glue on there. Do not worry about the squeeze out. That's what you have the cloth for. I'm gonna line these up. I'm gonna take my Craig clamp right here. Clamp these together. The first screw started. Second screw started. Now I'll go ahead and tighten them up. Unclamp. And right here was where I was talking about you want to prevent the squeeze out. Next, I'm gonna assemble the larger piece down here at the bottom, and I'm gonna use one of our 2-inch upright pieces as a spacer. All right, I'm gonna put my glue on the long piece just as I did on the other one. Plenty of glue, do not skimp on the glue. Glue is cheap. Fixing a broken face frame is not. Go ahead and get my screws in here ready. Slide this baby down. First screw in, go ahead and clamp down here on the bottom screw. Guys, and remember, do not worry if this is not perfect. You want it to be as close as you can, but if it is not perfect by maybe a 32nd, 16th at most, I'm gonna fix that over here in the drum sander. Or with a softwood like this alder, you can run a 60, start with a 60 grit, start with an 80, and you can sand all of that out very easily. I'm gonna take my little rag again, wipe as much glue off as I can, mainly right here in the corner joint. And next we're gonna move on to our first upright piece. All right guys, so I don't have my assistant here today. I don't know if you can see this in the picture, but I've clamped the face frame down over here to the assembly table to hold this right. I'm gonna grab my spacer, my 26 3/4 spacer that I cut here. I'm gonna use a clamp and I'm gonna temporarily clamp this side. That way we can glue and work on that side. Right there is about where we need to be. Let's stick this in there. Clamp it off, pop my little spacer out, my spacer right here. I'm going to mark this as well, just as an extra precaution. It helps me make sure the spacer's perfect. We'll raise this up out of here. I've already got my screws in the hole. We'll put the glue here. Wipe the glue down a little bit. And by using those marks, I can get it in its proper place, close, before I clamp it down. We'll go ahead and clamp it down. We'll double check with the spacer. We might just be a little bit fat, so I'm gonna use my rubber mallet. Lightly bump that over to exactly where it needs to be. I'm gonna get each screw started. And once they get started, both of them, then I can tighten them down. Same process again. Take my rag, clean out the glue squeeze out. All right guys, we got that first divider in. Let's unclamp our clamp here. Let's spin our face frame around on our assembly table. I'm gonna go ahead and clamp it back down just for safety. And here's the next piece we're gonna be putting in, using our spacer once again. All right guys, I've scooted the face frame down and we went ahead and installed this piece. Now we'll install the last piece on the end, and it's gonna be just the same way as I did all the rest. I don't have a spacer for here because I used these pieces that were here, but I will measure it with the tape. So we're gonna go ahead and glue up this end, glue up this end. We'll clamp this baby on, take a measurement, and make sure that our numbers are proper. Plenty of glue. I'm gonna go ahead and stick the screws in these holes so that we'll be ready. All All right, I got my top piece clamped perfectly. I'm gonna go ahead and screw it in. We can unclamp that. Wipe the glue squeeze out off. Now I'm gonna measure, and we're looking for 26 1/4. And right now we're at 26 5/16. So let's unclamp this and scoot it down just 1/16 of an inch. Remeasure. 26 1/4, exactly what it's supposed to be. We've got another clamp here. We'll go ahead and clamp it on where the other 2 screws are gonna go. We can screw all this at once. Unclamp and wipe our glue squeeze out off. And there you have it, guys. I've brought it over here, set it up against the saw table. It's up against the other face frame. Let me scoot it out here. There's you a little better look at it. So we'll have 2 doors there, 2 doors there, 2 doors there. It'll be inset. Our baseboard will go along the bottom. It'll be a base similar to this cherry base right here that I've routed out for another job, but it will be 4.5 inches tall, so that it's gonna come up and leave our 2-inch reveal. All right, so now that we got our face frame completely built, we just need to let this glue dry and set up, which doesn't take very long at all, but you just wanna make sure it's good and tight, all your joints are together properly, and then we'll run right over here to the drum sander, right here, and we'll shoot this frame through the drum sander, sand it down to where everything is perfectly smooth. It will have marks in it like this right here. Let me show you on the other face frame that I did, but I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but it will have the lines from the sandpaper in there. But that's after that, we'll bring it back over here to our assembly table. We'll run the orbital over it, starting with a 60 or 80 grit, and we'll work our way up to a 150 to 180. All right, guys, our face frame's dry. We're gonna adjust this drum sander right here to exactly the height it needs to be. Get the dust collector fired up. Let's get the drum sander fired up, and we'll take our frame through here for the first pass. Okay guys, so we've successfully run the face frame through the drum sander on the back and the front. You want to get that back smooth, just like you want to get the front smooth, so that once you assemble your boxes, they'll butt up to the back evenly. So now I've laid it over here on the table, and I'm gonna run my orbital sander on it, starting with the 80 grit on this alder, and we're gonna run it up all the way to the 150 or the 180. We do have some slight burn marks here where the paper gets a little glue on it, it gets something on it, it makes a little burn mark, but that will easily come out with a 60 or an 80 grit sandpaper. Here it is, I've got it back down on the floor, we got this thing sanded up, and I just want to show you how some of these knots look. It's pretty cool. And the next step that we'll take is we will fill this crack right here. If there's anywhere that needs filling, we'll go over and we'll fill that, and then we'll run over it with our 180 grit sandpaper again. I know it looks pretty good and it is gonna be rustic, but those joints right there, you just like them to be perfect. Like this one right here, you can see we just got a little gap right there for some reason. We'll fill that in before we do a final sand before stain. And that'll be in maybe in another video when I show y'all how I do the finish work. So right there is just a little tiny place. But those knots are pretty sweet right there. Check this one out. This one goes all the way through. So I really appreciate everybody for watching my video today on how to build a face frame on my kitchen island. I will be having more videos come out completing this island and other videos building cabinetry. So make sure that you click that subscribe button, click the bell, turn your post notifications on so you don't miss any of my videos. I try to post at least 2 to 3 times a week, if not more, every other day if I'm able. And I will see y'all in the next video.